Lucas sat at the edge of the water, where the waves had already lost their force and only lazily shifted the sand beneath his palms. The evening sea was almost still, long, heavy breaths of tide rolling in and slipping back, leaving dark bands of wet shore behind. He had come alone. As always. The beach emptied quickly at this hour, the last families gathering towels, children dragging inflatable rings, the sun dissolving into copper and pale rose as it lowered toward the horizon. Lucas didn't watch the sunset. He stared at a fixed point ahead where water met sky and everything blurred into a single grey line. Inside it was quiet. Not peaceful quiet like after a long noise, when your ears still ring with absence. He dragged his fingers through the sand, smoothing the small ridges left by a wave. It was cold. Lucas left his hand there, as if checking whether he could still feel anything at all. The chill reached his skin, but no deeper. Everything else inside felt muted. He didn't know why he had come today. Or rather, he knew but refused to name it. A wave crept closer than usual and touched the toes of his sneakers. Lucas didn't move. Water slowly soaked into the fabric, darkening around the laces. He watched the stains spread and thought that time probably looked like this, barely noticeable at first, then impossible to ignore. "You're here again." The voice came from behind, calm, faintly amused, familiar enough to ache. Lucas didn't turn right away. For a second he just closed his eyes as if the sound might vanish if he didn't confirm it. But the footsteps on sand were real, soft, muffled. And they stopped right beside him. "I knew I'd find you by the water," the voice added. Lucas exhaled slowly and finally turned his head. Avery stood a couple of steps behind him, hands in the pockets of a light jacket, hair tousled by the wind. The sun had nearly reached the horizon, its light falling sideways across his face, leaving half of it in shadow. He looked straight at Lucas, not studying, not surprised, but as if he had seen him here many times and had come to this exact place each time just to find him. Lucas held his gaze a second longer than he meant to. His heart gave one uneven beat, too loud for the quiet. "Are you following me?" he asked, voice rough from disuse. Avery shrugged and sat down beside him without asking. The sand settled softly under his weight. "No," he said, "I just know where you hide when the world gets too loud." For a while, neither of them spoke. The tide kept moving in its slow rhythm, folding over itself, retreating, returning, as if the sea were breathing for both of them. Avery leaned back on his hands, legs stretched toward the water, close enough that the foam occasionally brushed the soles of his shoes. Lucas stayed where he was, knees drawn slightly up, elbows resting on them, gaze fixed somewhere ahead that wasn't really the horizon anymore. He was aware of Avery beside him in fragments. The faint creak of leather when he shifted. The smell of salt caught in his jacket. The quiet warmth radiating from his shoulder, not touching but close enough to feel. It had always been like that with Avery. Never quite contact, never quite distance. "You look worse," Avery said eventually. Lucas let out a humorless breath. "Nice to see you too." "I mean it," Avery's tone softened but only slightly. "You disappear for days, then I find you sitting here like you've been carved out of driftwood." Lucas's jaw tightened. "Maybe I just like the beach." Avery turned his head. Lucas could feel the weight of the look before he met it. "You hate sand," Avery said. That almost made him smile. Almost. Another wave slid in, colder now as the light faded. The sky had shifted from copper to bruised violet, the first thin line of dusk stretching over the water. Wind lifted the edges of Lucas's hair and carried the distant cry of gulls down the shore. "I thought you left," Lucas said quietly. Avery didn't answer right away. He picked up a small shell from the sand, turned it between his fingers, brushing grit from its ridges. "I did," he said at last. Lucas swallowed. "So why are you here?" Avery flicked the shell back toward the water. It landed short, sinking into wet sand. "Because you're still here." The words settled between them, heavier than they should have been. Lucas stared at the darkening line of the sea, feeling something tighten in his chest, something he had kept locked down for weeks, maybe months. He had told himself distance was easier, quieter, safer. But Avery's presence unraveled that lie simply by existing beside him. "You don't get to do that," Lucas said, voice low. "Do what?" "Show up like nothing happened." Avery's shoulders stilled. For the first time since arriving, he looked uncertain, not outwardly, not enough for anyone else to notice, but Lucas saw it. He always had. "I know," Avery said. "I'm not pretending nothing happened." "Then what are you pretending?" Avery turned toward him fully now, one knee drawing up in the sand. The last light caught in his eyes, dark, reflective, almost the same color as the water beyond them. "That it didn't matter," he said, "when it did." Lucas's breath caught, sharp, involuntary. The sea rolled in again, closer, foam spreading around their shoes. Neither of them moved. "Lucas," Avery said, quieter now, "I didn't think you'd still be waiting here." Lucas shook his head once fast. "I'm not waiting." Avery studied him for a long moment, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had curled into the sand, the stubborn angle of his gaze. "Then why do you keep coming back?" Avery asked. Lucas opened his mouth. No answer came. Only the sound of the tide, and the steady, impossible fact of Avery sitting beside him again. Lucas dug his fingers deeper into the sand. Grains pressed under his nails, damp and cold, grounding him in something physical, something simple. It was easier than looking at Avery, easier than answering. Because there was an answer. There had always been one. He just didn't trust what would happen if he said it out loud. The tide surged in again, higher this time, water curling around the edges of their shoes before slipping back. Avery didn't move away. Neither did Lucas. Their shoulders were closer now, not touching, but the space between them had narrowed to a breath. "You always do this," Avery said quietly. Lucas frowned. "Do what?" "Hide the important part." Avery's gaze stayed on him, steady, unblinking. "You circle it, you almost say it, then you bury it." A flicker of irritation rose, defensive, familiar. "Not everything needs to be said." "It does," Avery said. "Some things only exist if you say them." Lucas turned then, finally meeting his eyes head-on. "That's not true." "It is for me." The words landed harder than they should have. Lucas felt them in his chest, in the tight place just under his ribs where everything unsaid seemed to live. For a moment neither of them spoke. The sky had deepened to indigo, the horizon was almost gone now, sea and night blending together. The beach behind them had emptied completely, leaving only wind and water and the distant pulse of waves. "You left," Lucas said. Avery's jaw shifted slightly. "Yes." "You didn't call." "I know." "You didn't even," Lucas stopped, breath catching. He swallowed, tried again. "You just disappeared." The last word came out thinner than he meant. Avery looked down briefly, dragging his thumb across the back of his other hand, as if wiping away invisible sand. "I thought it would be easier," he said. "For who?" Lucas's voice sharpened. "For you." Lucas let out a disbelieving laugh. "You don't get to decide that." "I wasn't deciding," Avery said. "I was removing the problem." Silence dropped between them again, heavy, almost physical. Lucas stared at him. "You think you were the problem?" Avery didn't answer. That was answer enough. Something in Lucas's chest twisted, anger and hurt, and something softer, more dangerous, rising through both. He pushed himself upright, turning toward Avery fully now, knees shifting in the sand. "You don't get to rewrite it like that," Lucas said, voice shaking despite him. "You don't get to walk away and then come back and say you did it for me." Avery met his eyes, and there was no deflection there now. No humor, no practiced calm. "Then tell me what it was," Avery said. The challenge was gentle. But it was still a challenge. Lucas's pulse thudded in his throat. The words pressed up, the real ones, the ones he had swallowed for so long they felt fused to bone. He shook his head once. "You already know." "Say it anyway." The wind lifted, colder now, tugging at their clothes. A wave rolled in and broke around their feet, water soaking through Lucas's sneakers completely this time. He barely felt it. Avery leaned closer, just slightly. "Please," he said. That word, soft, stripped of everything, broke the last of Lucas's resistance. "You mattered," Lucas said, the words rough and uneven. "That's what it was. You mattered and you left like it didn't." Avery's breath caught. Lucas kept going before he could stop himself, voice gaining force from everything held back too long. "You don't get to decide you were a problem," he said. "You were the—" He stopped. The word hovered there. Too big, too exposed, too final. Avery didn't move, didn't look away. The what? He asked quietly. Lucas's throat tightened. The sea roared in his ears, or maybe it was just his blood. He looked at Avery, really looked at the familiar line of his mouth, the tension in his shoulders, the fear he was trying not to show. And suddenly Lucas understood something he hadn't let himself see before. Avery hadn't left because he didn't care. He had left because he cared too much. The realization hit like surf against rock, sharp, cold, undeniable. Lucas's voice dropped to almost nothing. "You were the reason," he said. The words didn't fade after he said them. They stayed there, suspended between them, as real and irreversible as the tide crawling higher around their feet. "You were the reason." Avery didn't speak. For a long second he didn't even seem to breathe. His eyes stayed locked on Lucas's face, searching it as if he needed proof the sentence had actually happened, that it hadn't been imagined or misheard or pulled from some hope he had buried months ago. "The reason," Avery repeated quietly. Lucas's pulse was still racing. Now that the words were out, there was no pulling them back, no reshaping them into something safer. He felt raw, exposed in a way that made every nerve feel too close to the surface. "Yes," he said. The sea surged in again, water washing fully over their shoes this time, cold soaking through fabric and socks. Neither of them moved away. Avery's throat worked once. For what? Lucas let out a breath that trembled at the edges. For staying, for leaving, for all of it. He forced himself to hold Avery's gaze. "You were the reason I came here. You were the reason I kept coming back after you were gone. I thought if I sat in the same place long enough, eventually you'd..." He cut himself off, jaw tightening. "Come back," Avery finished, barely audible. Lucas didn't answer. He didn't need to. Something shifted in Avery's expression then, not sudden, not dramatic, but deep. Guilt, yes, relief too. And under both, something brighter and more frightening, hope. "You really believed that," Avery said. Lucas gave a small, humorless shrug. "Didn't matter if I believed it, I did it anyway." Avery looked down at the water moving around them, then back at Lucas. The distance between their shoulders had closed completely now. Fabric brushed fabric when the wind pushed them slightly together. "I stayed away because I thought you needed space," Avery said. "Because every time I got close, you looked like you were about to fall apart." "I was," Lucas said. Avery flinched almost imperceptibly. "But not because of you," Lucas added quickly, "because of what you were." Avery's brow furrowed. "Which was?" Lucas swallowed. Saying it once had been hard enough. Saying it again felt like stepping off a ledge on purpose. "Everything," he said. The word landed softer than before, but heavier. Avery stared at him, stunned into stillness. Lucas gave a shaky breath, forcing the rest out before fear could clamp down again. "You were the one place that felt right, and that terrified me, because if I lost you, I'd lose that too." Avery's voice was almost a whisper. "So you pushed me away." Lucas nodded once, "And you left." "I thought that's what you wanted. I thought you'd fight harder." The confession slipped out before Lucas could stop it. They both froze. Wind dragged over the water. Foam curled and broke around their ankles. Somewhere far down the beach, a gull cried once and fell silent. Avery's eyes searched his face, something fragile opening there. "You wanted me to stay." Lucas laughed under his breath, a sound with no humor in it at all. "I wanted you to choose me, even when I was making it impossible." Avery exhaled, long and unsteady, as if something inside him had finally loosened after being locked too tight for too long. "I never stopped choosing you," he said. Lucas's chest hitched. "You just couldn't see it," Avery added, "because I chose you by leaving." Lucas shook his head slowly. "That's not choosing, that's disappearing." Avery leaned closer, voice low, roughened by everything unsaid between them. "No, that was me loving you in the only way I thought wouldn't break you." The tide surged again, cold water rising higher along the shore, and for the first time Lucas felt Avery's hand brush his. Neither of them pulled away. The contact was barely there. Just the side of Avery's hand against Lucas's, cool skin, damp from sea air, but it sent a sharp, electric awareness up Lucas's arm and straight into his chest. Every nerve seemed to flare at once, as if his body had been waiting months for this exact point of connection. Neither of them moved. The tide slipped back, dragging sand from under their shoes. Their hands stayed where they were, balanced on that thin edge between accident and choice. Lucas stared at the place where their fingers touched. "You always do that," he said quietly. Avery didn't pull away. "Do what?" "Get close enough that I can feel it," Lucas said, "but not enough that I can be sure." Avery's breath caught soft, almost soundless. The wind pushed his sleeve against Lucas's wrist, deepening the contact. Still, he didn't move. "I wasn't sure I was allowed to be closer," Avery said. The honesty in it hit harder than any argument. Lucas turned his hand slightly, just enough that their fingers slid together instead of resting side by side. Sand shifted under their palms. Skin met skin fully now, warm despite the cold air. Avery went very still. The world seemed to narrow to that single point. Their joined hands, the slow rush of water, the dim violet light fading toward night. "You were," Lucas said. His voice shook, but he didn't pull back. "You always were." Avery closed his eyes for a second, as if the sentence hurt and healed at the same time. When he opened them, the guarded distance that had lived there for so long was gone, stripped away, leaving something open and almost unbearably vulnerable. "I didn't know how to stay," he said, "not without hurting you." "You hurt me by leaving," Lucas said. "I know." The admission came without defense, without softening. It settled heavy and real between them. Lucas tightened his fingers unconsciously. Avery answered immediately, their grip shifting from tentative to certain, palm to palm now, thumbs brushing, anchoring. The sea rolled in again, soaking them both to the ankles. Cold spread through Lucas's shoes, but he barely noticed. All his awareness had collapsed into touch, breath, the closeness of Avery's shoulder against his. "I thought if I stayed," Avery said quietly, "you'd see how much you mattered to me, and that would make you run." Lucas shook his head, eyes stinging. "I ran because I already knew." Avery's brows drew together. "Knew what?" Lucas swallowed. The words felt less impossible now, still frightening, but no longer locked. "That you were the only person who ever felt like home," he said. Avery inhaled sharply. Lucas forced himself to keep going. "And if you were home, then losing you would mean I had nowhere left to go." The last light drained from the horizon. Night settled fully over the water, turning the sea into a dark, moving field. The world beyond them disappeared. There was only surf and wind and the warmth of their joined hands in the cold. Avery leaned closer, forehead nearly touching Lucas's temple. His voice dropped to a whisper meant only for him. "You never lost me," he said. Lucas closed his eyes. "You did," he whispered back, "for a while." Avery's thumb moved slowly across the back of Lucas's hand. A small, repetitive motion, grounding, apologetic, intimate in a way words couldn't reach. "I'm here now," Avery said, "if you still want me to be." Lucas turned his head. They were inches apart, close enough that he could feel Avery's breath against his cheek, warm against the chill air. Close enough that the space between them felt charged, fragile, one movement away from changing everything. Lucas searched his face, the familiar lines, the fear still there under the hope, the quiet waiting. "You were never supposed to leave," Lucas said. Avery's voice was rough. "Then tell me to stay." The tide surged in again around them. Lucas didn't look away. "Stay," he said. Avery's lips curved slightly, not a full smile. Not yet, just the shadow of one, hesitant and uncertain. Lucas could feel it more than see it. The vulnerability in that small gesture hit harder than anything he'd imagined. "Why didn't you ever just say that?" Lucas asked, voice low, almost breaking. "Because I was scared," Avery admitted. "Scared of being too much, scared you'd leave, scared of losing myself again if I let anyone in." Lucas shook his head, a laugh caught somewhere between relief and disbelief. "I get that, I've been scared too. Scared I wasn't enough, scared that if I let someone see me they'd realize I didn't have it together either." Avery's gaze softened. "You think I didn't see that? You think I didn't notice how hard you're holding everything together?" Lucas swallowed. "Maybe I didn't want anyone to notice." "Too late," Avery said, and the corner of his mouth twitched as if a full smile was fighting its way out. "I already do." The air between them felt alive, thick with unsaid truths. heavy with longing and fear. The ocean crashed at their feet, indifferent, relentless. Lucas's hand tightened slightly on Avery's, and Avery's thumb traced small circles over the back of his hand. "I don't want to hide anymore," Avery whispered. "Not from you, not from myself." Lucas's chest tightened. He had spent months pretending he could manage alone, pretending he was fine. And now, the weight of everything lifted just enough that he could see, maybe even believe, he didn't have to do it alone. "Then we don't," Lucas said. "We don't hide, we just figure it out, one step at a time." Avery nodded slowly, letting the words sink in. "One step at a time," he echoed. The wind tugged at their clothes. Waves hissed against the sand. The sky had deepened to a velvet blue, sprinkled with the first shy stars of evening. And for the first time in weeks, Lucas felt a strange, fragile kind of peace, the kind that comes from finally being seen fully by someone who mattered more than anything else. He looked down at their joined hands, then up at Avery. "Okay," he said quietly, "let's start." Avery's lips curved into the smallest, most real smile yet. "Okay," he said. And for the first time since arriving at the beach that morning, neither of them felt the need to run. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, vast and unjudging, and for now that was enough. The wind had died down slightly, leaving only the steady rhythm of waves rolling onto the shore. Lucas and Avery stayed where they were, hands still intertwined, letting the silence settle around them. It wasn't empty, it was full, heavy with everything they had just admitted. "So," Lucas said finally, his voice cautious, "how do we do this?" Avery glanced down at their hands, then back up at him, eyes searching. "We keep work separate. Everything at the office stays at the office. No special treatment, no shortcuts. If anyone asks, your promotion is because you earned it, which you did." Lucas nodded slowly, letting that sink in. "Agreed, and outside we see where this goes." "Yes," Avery said, "but we do it carefully, no rushing, no pretending we have it all figured out." He gave a small, almost mischievous tilt of his head. "We take it one step at a time." Lucas felt the tension in his chest ease just slightly. "One step at a time," he repeated, letting the words anchor him. Avery smiled again, softer now, something genuine that Lucas hadn't seen before. "And if it doesn't work?" "We walk away, clean, no drama, no resentment," Lucas said firmly. Avery nodded, eyes lingering on his face. Then, for a brief moment, the barrier fell away. He looked at Lucas the way he had on Saturday morning, the way that saw past the job title, past the defenses, straight into him. "I don't know how to do this," Avery admitted softly. I haven't let anyone in like this in a long time." "Neither have I," Lucas said, "but maybe that's okay. Maybe we figure it out together." The tide rolled higher, sending a thin sheet of water over their shoes. The ocean's rhythm mirrored the tentative beats of their own hearts, uncertain but steady. Avery took a slow breath. "We're doing this then, together." "Yes," Lucas said without hesitation, "together." They stayed there a moment longer, watching the waves, letting the magnitude of their words settle. Outside of the office, outside of titles and expectations, they were just two people, vulnerable and human, daring to trust again. "Okay," Avery whispered finally, "one step at a time." Lucas nodded, squeezing his hand gently, "One step at a time." The sky darkened completely now, stars twinkling faintly overhead. For the first time in weeks, Lucas felt like he could breathe, really breathe, knowing he wasn't alone, and that maybe, just maybe, he was enough. Over the following weekends, Lucas and Avery established their routine. They met at the beach early, when the world was still asleep, and the horizon barely glowed with the first light of morning. It became their sanctuary, a place where work titles didn't exist, and the weight of expectation faded into the sound of waves. They walked barefoot along the shoreline, talking about everything that didn't belong in an office. Avery shared the pressures of running a company at 32, the board members who doubted her decisions because of her age and gender, the loneliness that came with being in charge. Lucas told her about Emma, about the guilt that gnawed at him when he left his daughter with his sister, the fear that he was failing her just like he had failed in his marriage. Sometimes their hands brushed, sometimes they intertwined, but they kept these moments small, careful, measured, testing the fragile trust growing between them. Every laugh, every shared glance, every silence was a brick in the new structure they were building, slowly and deliberately. Despite the intimacy of their mornings, the office remained a place of professional distance. Avery treated Lucas exactly as she treated every other senior lead, fair, direct, and professional. Meetings were businesslike, strategy discussions were focused. Nothing hinted at the personal connection that grew outside of work. Lucas threw himself into the work itself, presenting ideas with precision and dedication. The promotion, the raise, the trust Avery had shown, it all gave him purpose. And yet the boundary they maintained became a source of tension. Every glance across a conference table, every passing remark, reminded Lucas that the personal world they had built was separate from the one that defined his career. It was necessary, it was safe, but it didn't stop the ache in his chest, the quiet longing for moments that existed only in stolen hours. One Sunday afternoon, Lucas sat on the couch with Emma watching cartoons. She leaned against him, small and perceptive, and suddenly looked up with a seriousness that made his heart tighten. "Daddy," she asked, her voice quiet, "are you sad?" Lucas froze. He had thought he'd hidden it well enough, thought he had covered the weight on his shoulders. But children notice everything, feel everything. "What makes you think that?" he asked gently. "You look sad," Emma said, "like when Mommy left, but different." Lucas pulled her close, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I'm okay, sweetheart, I'm just figuring some things out." Emma tilted her head, eyes wide and searching. "Is it about the lady?" Lucas's heart skipped. She had overheard the late-night phone calls with Avery, the ones he had thought were private. He hesitated, then nodded. "She's very nice," he said carefully. "But it's complicated." "Why?" Emma asked simply, 6-year-old directness that left no room for evasion. "Because sometimes grown-ups make things more complicated than they need to be," Lucas admitted. Emma leaned against him. "Then you should stop being sad, Daddy. You're allowed to be happy." The words hit him harder than anything Avery had said. It was simple, yet it carried the weight of truth. For the first time in years, Lucas realized that happiness wasn't only for other people. Maybe he deserved it too. After putting Emma to bed, Lucas sat alone on the couch, the soft glow of the lamp casting long shadows across the apartment. His hands shook slightly as he picked up his phone. He dialed Avery's number, unsure if he had the courage to speak, unsure if he even wanted to hear the answer. The line rang twice before she picked up. "Hello." Her voice was careful, cautious, but there was an edge of vulnerability that made his chest tighten. I can't do this anymore," Lucas said, voice low, almost breaking. There was silence on the other end, just the sound of Avery's breath, steady but deliberate, filling the pause. "Can't do what?" she finally asked. "The distance, the pretending, hiding how we feel from each other." Lucas leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling, as if the shadows could absorb the weight of his words. "I thought keeping it separate would make it easier. It doesn't, it just makes me feel more alone." "I know," Avery said finally. Her voice was soft, but he could hear the emotion threading through it. "I feel it too." Lucas exhaled shakily. "So what do we do?" "I don't know," Avery admitted. "I've been trying to convince myself that staying distant is the safe thing, that keeping control protects me from getting hurt. But the truth is, I'm already in too deep. I'm already hurt." Lucas closed his eyes, letting the honesty settle over him. "Me too." Another pause stretched over the line, thick and heavy with everything they hadn't dared to say before. Then Avery spoke again, voice quiet, deliberate. "That question I asked you on the beach about whether anyone had ever asked if you were okay, that wasn't just idle curiosity. That was me seeing something in you I recognized in myself. That was me reaching out because I needed to know I wasn't the only one who felt that way." "I know," Lucas said, heart pounding. "No, you don't," Avery corrected gently. "You think it was a moment of weakness, but it was. I meant every word. And I've spent weeks trying to convince myself I didn't because it would have been easier, but I can't lie to myself anymore." Lucas felt something break open inside him, relief, fear, hope, all colliding at once. He didn't know what to say. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "I don't know how to believe I'm good enough for someone like you." "Someone like me?" Avery's voice sharpened, almost angry. "Lucas, I'm not perfect. I've just been pretending I have it all together for so long that I forgot what it feels like to be real. You make me feel real. You make me feel like I don't have to be the CEO every second of the day, and that scares me more than anything." Lucas opened his eyes. "Then maybe we're both scared for the same reason," he said. Avery's voice softened. "Maybe, but I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of letting fear make decisions for me." "So what do we do?" Lucas asked. "We try," Avery said simply. We stop pretending this isn't happening, we stop hiding, we figure it out as we go. And work, he asked. Work stays work, Avery said firmly. We already agreed on that. And everything else, Lucas pressed. Avery's voice softened further. We stop holding back. Lucas's heart pounded. This was the moment, the choice. He could step back, protect himself, or take the risk. Okay, he said finally. Okay, Avery sounded surprised, like she expected resistance. Yes, okay, we try. There was a long silence, and then Avery laughed. Real laughter this time, warm, relieved, unguarded. I'll see you Saturday, she said. Same place, Lucas replied. He hung up, letting himself sink into the quiet of his apartment. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe that maybe he was allowed this, that maybe he was enough. Not because of a job, a title, or accomplishments, but because someone had truly seen him and had chosen to stay anyway. Lucas woke before sunrise, his mind buzzing with anticipation and nerves. Sleep had been restless, filled with half-formed thoughts of what might happen, what he might say, what she might say. But the nervous energy was different from fear. It was charged, alive, the kind that came with standing at the edge of something entirely new. After a quick coffee, he drove the familiar route to the beach. The sky was painted in soft shades of pink and gold, the first rays of the sun stretching across the horizon. He parked near the same spot as before and walked toward the water, shoes in hand, heart pounding. Avery was already there, standing barefoot near the rocks, the early light catching her hair as it moved gently in the breeze. When she saw him approaching, a small, tentative smile curved her lips, real and unguarded. Thought you might not come, she said softly. I almost didn't, Lucas admitted, his voice low. I kept thinking of all the ways this could go wrong, all the reasons I should just stay home and keep everything safe. And what changed your mind? Avery asked, tilting her head slightly. Lucas looked at the waves, then back at her. Emma told me I'm allowed to be happy, and she was right. I've spent so long convincing myself I don't deserve it that I forgot what it feels like to even try. Avery nodded slowly, understanding evident in her eyes. My therapist told me something similar last week, that I've been using control as a shield so long that I forgot how to feel, how to trust that I won't fall apart if I'm not in charge of everything. Lucas reached out, taking her hand as he had weeks ago. Her fingers tightened around his, anchoring them both in the moment. Are you scared? He asked. Terrified, Avery admitted, but I'm here anyway. They stood together, side by side, watching the sun rise fully over the ocean. The waves lapped gently at the shore, constant and patient. Lucas thought about the man he had been just weeks ago, convinced his life was falling apart, consumed by fear and loneliness. Now he could feel something different, something fragile and new but undeniably real, hope, and the simple, transformative truth that someone had truly seen him. Not the CEO, Avery whispered almost to herself, not the woman who has to have all the answers, just me. Lucas nodded, a soft smile spreading across his face. And me, he said, just Lucas. They walked along the shoreline together, hand in hand, footprints side by side in the wet sand. The morning stretched ahead of them, full of possibility. There would be hard conversations, boundaries to navigate, fears to face. But for now, in this moment, they were simply two people brave enough to be seen. And that, for now, was enough. In the weeks that followed, Lucas settled into his new role with renewed purpose. The responsibilities were meaningful, the projects engaging, and the raise allowed him to breathe financially for the first time in months. Bills were paid, Emma's future felt a little more secure, and the anxiety that had shadowed his days began to loosen its grip. At the office, he and Avery maintained the professional boundaries they had agreed on. She treated him as she treated every other senior lead, fair, direct, and uncompromisingly professional. Meetings were focused, discussions about strategy precise and no nonsense. There were no hints of the mornings they shared at the beach, no secret smiles or lingering touches. The workplace remained a place of clarity and control. But outside the office, their connection deepened. Early mornings at the beach became sacred, a time to exist without the weight of expectations. They talked about pressures, doubts, and personal fears, topics that had no place in conference rooms or board meetings. Avery opened up about the challenges of running a company at 32, the skepticism she faced, and the isolation of her role. Lucas shared the challenges of fatherhood, the guilt he felt when leaving Emma with his sister, and the lingering wounds from his failed marriage. They tested boundaries carefully, taking small risks. A hand brushed in passing, a shared smile, a glance that lingered too long. Each gesture was a quiet affirmation of trust, a promise to explore the connection without rushing. Lucas noticed a shift in himself. He felt more grounded, more seen, more capable of managing the pieces of his life. And Avery, too, seemed lighter, freer, someone who could let down the armor she wore at work and just be present, just herself. Every weekend, every conversation, every touch built something steady and real. They were learning, slowly and deliberately, how to exist together without losing themselves, and without letting the world intrude on the fragile bond they were creating. Despite the careful boundaries they maintained at work, the distance began to weigh on Lucas. Every Friday, when Avery drove back home after their early morning beach meeting, a hollow ache followed him through the weekend. He felt it during office meetings, when she glanced at him across the table, and he had to pretend she was just his boss. Even in his apartment, returning from work or picking up Emma, he realized how much space the absence of their connection had left. The stolen hours at the beach felt worlds apart from his daily reality, and the contrast made him painfully aware of how lonely he still was. Avoidance, he recognized, wasn't protecting him. It wasn't keeping him safe. It was just delaying the inevitable, the feeling that life felt fragmented, that the people he cared about and the life he wanted to build were all just out of reach. One quiet Sunday afternoon, Lucas sat on the couch with Emma, the television murmuring cartoons in the background. She turned to him, her little face serious and searching. "Daddy, are you sad?" The question stopped him cold. He had been so careful, so sure he was hiding it well enough. But Emma, perceptive and honest, saw through it all. "What makes you think that?" he asked softly. "You look sad," she said, "like when Mommy left, but different." The truth hit him in the chest. He had been carrying his fear, his guilt, and his loneliness for too long. "I'm okay, sweetheart," he said, pulling her close. "I'm just figuring some things out." "Is it about the lady?" Emma asked. Lucas froze. She had overheard his late-night phone calls with Avery, conversations he had thought were private. "She's very nice," he said finally, carefully, "but it's complicated." Emma considered this for a moment, then leaned against him. "Then you should stop being sad, Daddy. You're allowed to be happy." The simplicity of her words struck Lucas harder than anything Avery had said. For years, he had convinced himself happiness wasn't meant for him. But here, in this moment, his daughter reminded him that maybe he deserved it too. That night, after Emma was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Lucas sat on the edge of the couch, phone in hand, heart racing. He knew he couldn't keep hiding, not from Avery, not from himself. Taking a deep breath, he dialed her number. The phone rang twice before she answered. "Hello." Her voice was cautious, soft, but Lucas could hear a thread of vulnerability beneath it. I can't do this anymore," he said, voice low and shaking. A long pause followed, filled only with her steady breathing. "Can't do what?" she finally asked, careful. "The distance, the pretending, hiding what we feel from each other," Lucas admitted. "I thought keeping it separate would make it easier, but it doesn't. It only makes me feel more alone." "I know," Avery said quietly. "I feel it too." Lucas exhaled shakily. "So what do we do?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I've been telling myself that keeping my distance is the smart choice, that staying in control protects me from getting hurt. But the truth is I'm already in too deep. I'm already hurt." Lucas closed his eyes, letting the weight of her words sink in. "Me too," he whispered. Another pause stretched across the line, heavy with all that neither of them had dared to say. Then Avery spoke again, voice soft but deliberate. "That question I asked on the beach, whether anyone had ever asked if you were okay, that wasn't idle curiosity. That was me seeing something in you I recognized in myself. I needed to know I wasn't the only one who felt that way." "I know," Lucas said, though his heart pounded. "No, you don't," she countered gently. "You think it was a fleeting impulse, but it was. I meant every word, and I've spent weeks trying to convince myself I didn't because it would have been easier. But I can't lie to myself anymore." Lucas felt a mixture of relief, fear, and hope surge through him. He didn't know what to say. "I don't know how to do this," he finally admitted. "I don't know how to believe I'm good enough for someone like you." "Someone like me?" Avery's voice sharpened, almost frustrated. "Lucas, I'm not perfect. I've been pretending I have it all together for so long that I forgot what it feels like to be real. You make me feel real." You make me feel like I don't have to be the CEO every second of the day, and that terrifies me. Lucas met her honesty with his own. Then maybe we're both scared for the same reason. Maybe, she admitted, but I'm tired of being scared, tired of letting fear make the choices for me. So what do we do? Lucas asked. We try, Avery said simply. We stop pretending this isn't happening, we stop hiding, we figure it out as we go. And work? He asked cautiously. Work stays work, Avery said firmly. We already agreed on that. And everything else, he pressed. Avery's voice softened. We stop holding back. Lucas's heart raced. This was the moment he could retreat or take the risk. Okay, he said finally. Okay, Avery sounded surprised, almost expecting him to argue. Yes, okay, we try. Avery laughed, genuine, unguarded, full of relief. I'll see you Saturday, she said. Same place, Lucas replied. He hung up and sat quietly, letting himself believe that maybe, finally, he was allowed to have this, that maybe he was enough, not because of accomplishments or titles, but because someone had truly seen him and chosen to stay. Lucas woke before sunrise, heart pounding with anticipation. The night's sleep had been restless, thoughts spinning with possibilities, doubts and hopes. But for the first time in weeks, the anxiety felt different, lighter, charged with the thrill of stepping into something unknown. He brewed a quick cup of coffee, glanced at the empty apartment and drove to the beach. The horizon glowed with the first hues of dawn, soft pinks and golds stretching across the sky. He parked near the familiar spot, shoes in hand, and walked toward the water, every step echoing the nervous excitement in his chest. Avery was already there barefoot, standing near the rocks as she had before. Her hair moved gently in the morning breeze, and when she noticed him, a small, tentative smile appeared on her face, real, unguarded. Thought you might not come, she murmured, her voice soft, almost shy. I almost didn't, Lucas admitted, meeting her gaze. I kept thinking of all the ways this could go wrong, all the reasons I should stay home, keep everything safe. And what made you change your mind? Avery asked, tilting her head slightly. Lucas looked out at the waves, then back at her. Emma told me I'm allowed to be happy. And she was right. I've spent so long convincing myself I didn't deserve it that I forgot how to even try. Avery's eyes softened with understanding. My therapist said something similar last week, that I've been using control as a shield for so long, I forgot how to just feel. How to trust that I won't fall apart if I'm not in control of everything. Lucas reached out, taking her hand. This time her fingers wrapped around his with a quiet strength, holding on. Are you scared? He asked. Terrified, she admitted, but I'm here anyway. They stood together, side by side, watching the sunrise paint the ocean in gold and pink. The waves rolled in with their usual steady rhythm, constant and patient. Lucas thought about the man he had been just weeks ago, consumed by fear and loneliness, convinced life was falling apart. Now he felt something new, fragile hope tempered with the comfort of being seen. Avery wasn't the untouchable CEO here. She was just a woman, vulnerable, honest and real, and he could be just himself. Not the CEO, Avery whispered almost to herself. Not the woman who has to have all the answers, just me. Just Lucas, he replied, squeezing her hand gently. They began walking along the shoreline, footprints side by side in the wet sand. The morning stretched endlessly before them, quiet and full of possibility. Challenges would come, boundaries would need navigating, fears would resurface, but for now they had each other, and that was enough. Over the next few weeks, Lucas settled into the rhythm of his new role, the responsibilities meaningful, the projects challenging but rewarding. The raise gave him breathing room, allowing him to catch up on bills and invest in Emma's future. For the first time in months, he felt some sense of stability. At the office, he and Avery maintained their agreed-upon boundaries. She was professional, direct, and impartial, treating him like any other senior lead. Their meetings were business-focused, strategy-driven, and efficient. The personal connection they shared at the beach remained unspoken there, contained, carefully protected. Outside the office, however, their relationship blossomed in the quiet mornings they spent together. The beach became their sanctuary, a place where they could be themselves without titles or hierarchies. They spoke openly about pressures, vulnerabilities, and fears, topics that would never surface in a boardroom. Avery shared the isolation she felt running a company at 32, constantly questioned for being young and female. Lucas spoke of the guilt and worry that came with raising Emma alone, of the fear that he might fail her as he had failed in his marriage. Small gestures marked their growing closeness, a hand brushed in passing, a shared smile, lingering glances. Each act was a quiet affirmation of trust, a subtle acknowledgement of feelings they were learning to navigate carefully. Through these moments, Lucas began to feel lighter, more capable of facing his life, while Avery allowed herself to step out from the armor she wore in the office. Together, they discovered a fragile balance, a way to be emotionally close without losing themselves or their independence. Even the brief, stolen moments they shared created a sense of connection neither had experienced in years. They were exploring something delicate and new, learning slowly how to exist together in a world that demanded they remain apart. Despite their careful boundaries, Lucas felt the distance pressing down on him. Every Friday, when Avery drove home after their early morning beach meetings, an emptiness lingered with him through the weekend. It followed him into the office, during meetings where her professional gaze reminded him that she was still his boss, not a companion. Even returning to his apartment alone, he felt the absence sharply. The time they had together at the beach felt distant, fragile, a reminder of what he wanted but couldn't fully claim. Every stolen moment highlighted how incomplete his life felt without her presence. Avoidance, Lucas realized, wasn't protecting him. It wasn't keeping him safe. It was merely stretching the ache, amplifying the sense of isolation he already carried. The stolen weekends, the careful words, the invisible lines, none of it filled the growing void. One quiet Sunday afternoon, he sat with Emma on the couch, cartoons playing softly. Her small face turned toward him, serious and searching. "Daddy, are you sad?" she asked, her voice gentle but insistent. Lucas froze. He had thought he was masking his emotions well enough, but she saw through it. "What makes you think that?" he asked softly. "You look sad," she said, "like when Mommy left, but different." The truth hit him hard. He had been carrying fear, guilt, and loneliness for far too long. "I'm okay, sweetheart," he said, pulling her close. "I'm just figuring some things out." "Is it about the lady?" Emma asked. Lucas's heart skipped. She had overheard his late-night phone calls with Avery, the quiet conversations he thought were private. "She's very nice," he admitted, "but it's complicated." Emma considered this for a moment, then rested her head on his shoulder. "Then you should stop being sad, Daddy. You're allowed to be happy." Her simple words struck Lucas deeper than anything Avery had said. For years, he had believed happiness wasn't meant for him, that he didn't deserve it. Yet here was Emma, with the clarity only a child could have, telling him the truth he had forgotten, that he was allowed to try. For the first time in months, Lucas felt a small spark of hope, a reminder that maybe he could let himself be happy, if only he was brave enough to take the risk. Later that night, after Emma had fallen asleep, Lucas sat on the edge of his couch, phone in hand, heart racing. He couldn't keep pretending anymore, not to Avery, not to himself. Taking a deep breath, he dialed her number. The phone rang twice before she answered. "Hello." Her voice was cautious, quiet, but Lucas could sense the vulnerability beneath her usual composure. I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice trembling slightly. A long pause followed, the line filled only with her steady breathing. "Can't do what?" she asked carefully. "The distance, the pretending, hiding what we feel," Lucas admitted. "I thought keeping it separate would make things easier, but it just makes me feel more alone." "I know," Avery replied softly. "I feel it too." Lucas exhaled shakily. "So what do we do?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "I've been trying to convince myself that keeping my distance is the smart choice, that staying in control protects me from getting hurt. But the truth is, I'm already in too deep. I'm already hurt." Lucas closed his eyes, letting the weight of her words sink in. "Me too," he whispered. A silence stretched between them, heavy with everything neither had dared to say aloud. Then Avery spoke again, her voice deliberate, steady. "That question I asked you on the beach, about whether anyone had ever asked if you were okay, that wasn't idle curiosity. I saw something in you I recognized in myself. I needed to know I wasn't the only one who felt that way." "I know," Lucas said, though his heart raced. "No, you don't," she countered. "You think it was a fleeting impulse, a moment of weakness, but it was. I meant every word, and I've spent weeks trying to convince myself I didn't because it would have been easier. But I can't lie to myself anymore." Lucas felt a mix of relief, fear, and hope crash over him. He didn't know what to say. I don't know how to do this, he finally admitted. I don't know how to believe I'm good enough for someone like you. Someone like me? Avery's voice sharpened, almost frustrated. Lucas, I'm not perfect. I've been pretending I have it all together for so long that I forgot what it feels like to be real. You make me feel real. You make me feel like I don't have to be the CEO every second of the day, and that terrifies me. Lucas met her honesty with his own. Then maybe we're both scared for the same reason. Maybe, she admitted, but I'm tired of being scared, tired of letting fear make the decisions for me. So what do we do? He asked. We try, Avery said simply. We stop pretending this isn't happening, we stop hiding, we figure it out as we go. And work? He asked cautiously. Work stays work, Avery said firmly. We already agreed on that. And everything else, he pressed. Avery's voice softened. We stop holding back. Lucas's heart pounded. This was the moment. He could retreat, protect himself, or take the risk. Okay, he said finally. Okay, Avery sounded surprised, as if she expected him to argue. Yes, okay, we try. Avery laughed, genuine, relieved, unguarded. I'll see you Saturday, she said. Same place, Lucas replied. He hung up and sat quietly, letting himself believe that maybe, finally, he was allowed to have this, that maybe he was enough, not because of accomplishments or titles, but because someone had truly seen him and chosen to stay.